I haven't seen this. Oh, this is a really small creator. Overwatch is for boomers. Highly accessible. Why'd you link this to me? What are you trying to say? You trying to call me old? You trying to say I'm old? What are you trying to say? Overwatch is for boomers. I'm in.
I've played a lot of different competitive games in my time, hitting the highest rank or close to it in many of them throughout the years. And while I don't consider myself that old, I've definitely noticed some of my skills deteriorate with age. Mostly my reaction time, or
Yeah, I'm sorry to break it to you, Ruben. Dude, I will still snap, dude. I will teach y'all whippersnappers a thing or two. Don't start with me. Don't test me. Just give me 9 hours of quick play to warm up, and I swear to God, I'm gonna be rolling. I will roll anybody. I just need like a 9-hour warm up, okay?
more generally speaking, my speed. It's a skill I'd rely on a lot in games. I was very much a no-brain, guns blazing type of player that relied on my quicker reflexes to win, and it would work extremely well for younger me. I could get myself in the dumbest situations and still manage to come out intact. While I knew every time I did this that it was unbelievably dumb, I enjoyed the thrill in making really risky plays. I couldn't pinpoint an exact moment, but there came a time where I could no longer do this. As my reflexes dwindled, I started watching as my win percentages plummeted, and my other—
Yeah, you're gonna be rolling your wheelchair into the retirement home. Relax, Grandpa. I will f you up, I swear to God, Ruben.
stat lines started to take a hit as well. My self-esteem was crushed, and I genuinely didn't know if I wanted to keep playing competitive games. I was thinking that it might be time to throw in the towel and stick to single player if I were to game anymore.
Wait, how old is this
all
person?
Might sound a bit dramatic, but competitive gaming was really the only thing I could confidently say I was good at the time. So losing that hit hard. After a while,
hit hard.
Having slower reflexes wasn't the only thing that I was attributing to my lack of success.
Jason thinks it 3 months.
Not only had my reflexes been deteriorating, I started to notice that a lot of newer competitive games were being made specifically with people that were quick in mind.
Another big part of it, though, this is genuinely just true. When you become an adult, you have less time. You work, eventually maybe start a family, have hobbies, whether you're going to the gym, working on a car, go rock climbing. Some people fucking go outside, like weird shit, right? Like, no, you do stuff, right? And so you only have, if you work 9 to 5, if let's just say you're lucky, you have a 9 to 5 and that's it. You work 9 to 5 and then you commute there. So let's say it's a half-hour commute. You get home at 5:45, then you're going to make food. Takes about 30 minutes, give or take, if you're making something from scratch or you're just throwing something in the microwave, throwing something in the oven, right? Ordering out, whatever. Then if you're going to the gym after work, that's another hour you've tacked on, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how hard you're going. And all of a sudden, you've only got 4 hours at home, right? And so that 4 hours, you get to decide, do you want to watch some anime? Do you want to catch up on some TV shows? Do you want to go hang out with friends? Is it a weekend? Do you want to go out somewhere with friends? Because like you only have so many times you get to work, like see people, right? Because everyone has families, jobs, responsibilities. If they've moved, traveled, you got to get like housework done, whether it's chores, mowing the lawn. Your time starts to kind of be chipped away a lot, right? So you go from having, as a kid, maybe 8 hours for a day to watch or to play, to potentially 4 or less. So when you have less practice, you're not going to be as good,
Which sounds obvious to me now, but when I did have the skills to compete, I didn't realize how much my speed contributed towards.
Like I think of like Seagull, right? Like Seagull's old. He's an old boomer. He's an old gamer, but he's still got insane mechanical skill, right? Because he can play. We are 31. Relax there. If I'm an old grandpa being wheeled into the retirement home, you guys are fossils, But I'm just saying, though, like his mechanical skill is still insane. Every time I watch Apex, when he plays Apex now, I'm like, holy shit, this guy like played Apex for 3 weeks and looks like a pro player now. So a lot of it is practice, but I kind of agree. Like, as you get older, you do start to feel like you lose some of that skill.
Success until I lost it. Newerish games such as
Seagull catching strays. Listen, man, listen. My Twitch recap of the year is I used 2 Twitch emotes this year. 2 Twitch emotes, and both of them were Seagull's 1 emote. Okay? I only used the Twitch emote twice the entire year, and both of them were Seagull's. I don't want to hear it! Okay? I don't want to... I normally use like VTTV, FFC. Okay, let's continue.
Apex had turned the dial up to 11. And
sorry, hang on, let me back up a little bit. I kind of stopped for a sec.
Quick in mind. which sounds obvious to me now, but when I did have the skills to compete, I didn't realize how much my speed contributed towards my success until I lost it. Newerish games such as Fortnite and Apex had turned the dial up to 11, and for a good reason.
True.
With dozens of new competitive games being released all the time, and being forgotten within a few months, developers had to do something to get and hold the more dedicated players' attention. Their solution appeared, at least to me, to be to create games with very high skill ceilings, so that there was always something new for players to improve on. By adding in mechanics such as building in Fortnite, it made it nearly impossible to reach the ceiling in these games, if there even was one. A game like Apex's solution was to make their movement very fluid, while also introducing new characters. Something that Overwatch does as well, but we'll get to that. There's a lot to learn while playing these games, meaning there's a lot to hold your interest. If players aren't being introduced to new concepts in a game, they can quickly get bored, and will ultimately make the decision to move on to the next game. Not only does increasing the skill ceiling get more dedicated players to stay, but it also makes for an incredible viewing experience for those that...
Holy shit. When do you think this screenshot was taken in the category? Overwatch is 2020. Oh, it's season 5, because Hanzo Mythic.
Experience for those that don't have the same level of skill. As competitive gaming...
Wait, was that the point he was trying to make?
But it also makes for an incredible viewing experience for those that don't have
63
the same level of skill.
19k. Oof. That's probably with was that with drops? Maybe.
As competitive gaming has become more popular, the skill ceiling for these games has increased dramatically. But what about those who don't want to just watch the top players? What about
Hanzo Mythic was last season? You're right, my bad. You're right, it was last season. I was thinking the Ana Mythic was last season. Correct. My bad.
But those who want to be able to compete without needing crazy reflexes. You can say forget those players because they're not your target audience.
Old man memory? Nah, guys.
Or you can figure out a way to include them. Increasing the skill ceiling can create a huge barrier of entry to a game once it has been around long enough. People that have been playing from the beginning will have learned so much that it can make it more and more difficult
I say this all the time.
For players to get into the game. Fortnite and Apex eventually took measures to account for this by adding in modes that allow these newer players and the less dedicated to still have fun.
Yeah.
Fortnite introduced their zero build mode and creative maps, and Apex and Fortnite both introduced modes with respawning, so that the less skilled players could still play even if they were being
Apex
stomped
definitely.
on. All of this is great, but it still
I think
didn't
Fortnite
change
did a
the
little bit
fact that
better,
the
but
main
yeah.
competitive modes had a peak that was unreachable for those that couldn't keep up with the pace of other players. And that's what I think Overwatch does splendidly. I first tried Overwatch during the Overwatch 1 beta, but it didn't really hold my interest at the time, because as I mentioned, I was more of a no-brain, guns-blazing type of player, and that doesn't really work well in Overwatch.
Is this going where I think it is?
More heavily on playing as a team, rather than having a huge emphasis on individual skill. Individual skill is obviously still important, but to win, it takes a backseat to coordinating with your team, whereas I believe you can still be successful in most other games with individual skill alone. This approach to a competitive game is something I find unique to Overwatch, and I grew to enjoy it increasingly over time. So my first time trying the game, I was not impressed. But as I grew older and could no longer compete with what I assumed was the next generation
Holy shit, we're the retirement
started
home.
to lose interest in the games I once loved, and basically ended up shopping around for my next competitive gaming fix. My choices were limited, as I had already tried all the games I could think of, and as I described earlier,
my
I
Jesus.
was thinking of just throwing in the towel. 1, because of my decaying skill, and 2, because I no longer had as much time
Oh, come on, it can't be that bad.
due to an increasing level of real-life responsibilities. But that's when I rediscovered Overwatch. I decided to reinstall it and give it another shot. This was around March or April of 2018, and a new hero had just been released. Brigitte had come out around that time, and people that played a lot of Overwatch were not happy. She was a hero that fundamentally broke the balance of the game at the time.
Oh no.
And many of the dedicated player base hated her. Now, I've been saying that I was the type of player that liked to see how much dumb stuff I could get away with just for the thrill, and Brig was the perfect pick for that. She was so strong at release that she could solo a lot of heroes with ease, while still maintaining her health.
She could solo entire teams with ease. Let's be f***ing honest here.
On top of healing her team by just smacking people around. Since I was fresh into
we were literally just watching another video, and we literally ended up talking about how Overwatch 2 is going to be always impossible to change the gameplay loop because of characters like Ana and Brig, and here we are talking about someone's like, yeah, I picked up Overwatch because I could play Brig and kill everybody. Oh, Jesus.
Game. I still had a lot of bad habits that carried over from past gaming experiences, and Brig enabled those bad habits to work in Overwatch.
Oh, Jesus.
Until she inevitably got nerfed. And the more and more she got hit with the nerf bat, the more I had to learn how Overwatch was actually meant to be played. I had to start experimenting with other heroes to see if there were any others I liked. That's when I started to learn that none of the other heroes were designed to do what I was doing with Brig, or at least they weren't meant to be. This was the moment that it started to sink in that this game was different. I started to notice that instead of the game itself having a high skill ceiling, the heroes were the ones designed with varying skill ceilings. There were heroes that didn't require crazy
that is
aim
true.
or crazy reflexes, but if you wanted heroes that had those things, they still existed. The game was designed in a way that made it accessible to even people that weren't hardcore gamers. I could pick a hero like Ana and not have to zip around the map to be a valuable member of the team. But if I was playing
But there might be a little bit of a conversation that needs to be had there, that if I need to be the god aiming, jumping, running around gamer, and you can just hit E and beat you, that don't seem very good.
Support and wanted to do something like that, I could play Lucio. If I wanted a hero that required less aim, I had Moira, Brig, or Mercy to pick from. Every role had heroes in it with unique strengths that highlighted different skill sets. A competitive player like me, whose age was starting to catch up to him, could play this game without the need to be good at something like Fortnite's building or Apex's movement to compete at the top. I could take a break from this game and wouldn't have to worry about coming back to 100 new tricks that people learned while I was gone. The most I'd come back to was a new hero.
Me, when people ask me how the hell am I still top 500 when I play the bare minimum amount of games a season, it's really not that tough.
I had found a game that didn't feel like I had to grind every day to keep up with everyone else's increase in skill. I've been playing Overwatch on and off ever since this discovery, and after a while, I ended up hitting Grandmaster by just learning the game. Not learning how to increase my individual skill, but rather learning how to play with my team in a better way. Overwatch is definitely more of a brain over brawn type of game, and you can reach the top by simply outsmarting your opponents. Overwatch's design allows for players of all different skill levels to have access to competition without alienating anyone. You could have terrible reflexes, but if you learn to track ults and predict your opponents, you could prevent your team from losing a fight without having to outplay your opponents in the form of eliminating them. A lot of heroes have built-in ways to help your team without needing a high KD. If you don't have a lot of time to dedicate to video games anymore, Overwatch can work well for you. The mechanically gifted don't realize this, but their time is limited, and they're going to fall off eventually. I've noticed that with the increasing level of prize pools and competitive...
This is literally an advocate of Overwatch being the retirement home of gamers. This is... I feel so sad.
Gaming came an increase in the number of players that are willing to dedicate their lives to getting good at these games. Professional players are now playing these games the same way that people that play physical sports professionally do. Some of you watching may not be old enough to remember, so this may seem normal to you, but getting good at games to this level was not something that many players would do before, since you couldn't make a living off of it in the early days. There's a lot of players in this generation of gamers that all have the dream of becoming professional gamers, with sheer dedication.
Drop that dream. It's a terrible dream. Don't do that.
Dedication alone. I wish anyone trying to do this luck, as the competition is fierce, and becoming even more fierce by the day. Ultimately, most people play...
It literally depends on what game you pick.
Games for fun, and winning is fun. Getting stomped on is not. Overwatch, to me, has found the right balance of competitiveness and fun that doesn't rely too heavily on how often you're playing it. My message to those of you that are starting to get a bit tired of the grind of many modern games is to give Overwatch a shot. You may still not be able to reach the top, but I can tell you from experience that it's a much easier game to get good at than many of the other mainstream titles at the moment. Because
that's really interesting to say, because Overwatch has so many intricacies, and like they're speaking like they came in 2018, you know? So you know a lot of shit a normal player probably wouldn't know. Yeah, it's called counter-swapping, Pepe laugh. Okay, to be fair, you're not wrong. The counter-swapping will win you a of games nowadays. Team comps and I see people talk about team comps and like rock paper scissors stuff, and I'm like, dude, you couldn't be more wrong. Like you're like, oh, Reinhardt runs down Diva, and I'm like, when Ryan's strong, sure, you know, like otherwise, like, why are you playing frontline Diva? That don't make no sense. I get what they're saying. They're kind of right, but if you also picked up Overwatch tomorrow and you were trying to catch up to people that have been playing for 7 years, that gap is insane.
It requires a different set of skills that many that rely on speed and reflexes don't take the time to hone. So when I say Overwatch is for boomers, I don't mean that in the literal sense, that only older people can play it, but it made for a great title. What I mean is that it was made to be accessible to a wider audience. While there's a lot to criticize about the game, this is one thing I can appreciate about it, and I hope that you can too. I plan on making more videos that focus on the design of games and lessons learned while playing them.
That is kind of fair. Overwatch just has a little bit of something for everybody. There's definitely some arguments to be had. Like, for example, I think the Ana conversation's coming. That like, if you're playing 70% of the tank roster, if you don't have a Kiriko, you might just get slept in anti and explode at like any moment, you know? And there isn't counterplay. There really isn't counterplay to it, you know? Like some heroes like Winston have counterplay, like the longest time the whole Winston Ana thing was like a big showdown in Overwatch 1. Like, you want to jump in on the Ana and then you time your bubble, you know, to block her sleep, you know? Or like you jump in with Zarya bubble or with your Diva, right? But now, like, for things like Ram, Roadhog, Laga's gonna end up being Ana food. Doomfist in some ways, although Doom is a weird character. I don't think Doom should exist as a tank character, but that's a totally different conversation, and I'm not willing to have that right now. Ramatra, Ryan, if you beat him on the shield, so there is counterplay, but at the same time, it's... Zarya, there's counterplay. Diva, there's counterplay. Winston, there's counterplay. Ball, I guess. Not really, though. Sigma, there's counterplay, but that's not because he's got counterplay, that's just because he has the tools. Orisa sorta has counterplay, but your gold is so important that if you waste it for that, you'd have to eat it with the spin. So, like, yeah, there's counterplay, but not really at the same time. Like, you're gonna get antied, right? It's like, do you get antied with enough health that when you then fortify, you survive long enough, right? Like, if you get antied at half HP and you go for fortify, they can cut through that, right? Like, they'll chew through you. So it's just like, there's a lot of intricacies to talk about there, but overall, though, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. There's some good stuff about Overwatch in that way.